Gus, all the way in Australia, the other side of the universe. Nice to finally meet, and so glad to join today. And how are things in Australia? And welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Sid. It's great to connect, and thank you for having me on the call. Yeah, over in Australia, it's beautiful. I just went for a run. It's a beautiful morning, so I'm all good here. Thanks. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. If I really had the capabilities, I'd probably see if I could swim across the ocean, but I think it's probably a little bit too much for me. So, but we'll make this work. So I'm glad we're connecting today because we're going to talk about hair and baldness and hair growth and, of course, the hair guard. And so why don't you just share a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you're involved with the company, and look forward to diving in and talk more about this topic.
Yeah, sure. So I work for this company called Hairguard. We have a different approach to hair loss than basically most other companies out there, especially the big telehealth companies like Hims and Roman and things. And the way that I got started was that, I mean, hair loss is a huge problem and most guys are affected by it. It runs heavily through my family. And yeah, the way I got started with it is that my brother, who's actually 4 years older than me, started losing his hair very aggressively when he was about 20, which is horrible because, you know, it's such a thing of pride when you're younger to have thick hair, and then when you're losing it so young, it's awful. But he basically tried to figure out, well, he started trying the medications that you can take for hair loss, which you'll get recommended by doctors typically, which are minoxidil and finasteride. And unfortunately, he basically had some quite nasty side effects from both of those. One of them, with finasteride, it essentially blocks your testosterone. So as a young guy, it can have some nasty side effects that can be quite scary. And so after deciding not to continue with those two drugs, he basically wanted to figure out for himself what is really going on with hair loss and why don't we actually have anything that can reverse hair loss effectively without side effects. And that started him down this whole rabbit hole of research, trying to figure it out, understanding, you know, maybe a layer deeper than what doctors will typically tell you. And after he had some success with regrowing his own hair naturally, I got involved because my background is chemistry, and I joined the team to do product development to help bring Will's research and findings into a sort of a product that we could provide to other people, because other people were finding Will's research that he was publishing online, and they were getting really interested and excited about his findings. So that's basically where I joined the team.
Interesting. You know, I think the company made it big, as I had shared with you and one of your colleagues. Was on TikTok, one of the most popular skits out there. A character by the name of Chit was in the office, and he actually had the product on. It was just, it's such a funny skit, but the fact that it made it on there,
I know, yeah,
a lot.
I saw that. That was funny.
That was great. Yeah. So as far as the product, the GrowBand Pro, maybe you can kind of talk about the product and how it actually works. And, you know, I also enjoy it as well for massaging my, just massaging my scalp and relaxing. But, you know, I know a lot of people would be very interested, and I've seen a lot of people purchasing the product as well.
Sure. Well, yeah, let me just take a step back and give you a bit more context about where this idea of scalp massages even came from. Because if you're struggling with hair loss yourself, you're probably doing research online. You will have heard about DHT, or dihydrotestosterone, and heard that this is the culprit behind hair loss, and you need to block it in order to stop your hair loss. And there's so much information out there, and a lot of it is conflicting, or there's parts missing to it. So I think it'd be helpful if I just gave a bit more context on more about the science of hair loss, and then we could talk about the GrowBand Pro and how that came out of that a bit later.
That would be great, because this is where I got my spot right there. So I'm still trying to work on it.
Yeah, it's tough, isn't it?
It is.
So basically, when as I said, my brother Will was trying to figure out hair loss for himself, and he was in his early 20s. He has a degree in chemical engineering, and he had basically learned how to, do scientific research, understand these papers and what they're actually saying. And there are some really interesting papers some research papers that people don't really talk about, but they leave clues as to what is really going on with hair loss. And one of the key ones was from 1988, so a long time ago. And it actually showed that subcutaneous blood flow, which is basically just the blood flow in the skin, was 2.6 times lower in patients with balding scalps than patients with non-balding scalps. And this is a huge indicator that blood flow or lack of blood flow essentially is tied with losing hair. So if you think about any organ in your body, if it doesn't get an adequate supply of blood, then eventually it's just going to, it's going to atrophy and wither and die. And that's basically what's happening with your hair follicles, is that they're not getting enough blood flow. And so over time, they are slowly withering away and die. But then why are they not getting enough blood flow? And this is where DHT comes into the puzzle, because DHT is involved with hair loss. Because if you do block it 100%, then your hair loss stops. But let's say that you've lost most of your hair and then you take a drug that blocks DHT, you aren't going to get full regrowth. Basically, you'll just your hair loss will stop getting worse, but you're not going to, regrow your hair back to 100%. And so there's something else going on. And this is basically the key piece of the puzzle, which is that over time, your scalp, as it's undergoing this balding process, well, the balding process is your scalp physically changing. So if you pinch the back of your hand, you can feel that the skin is really nice and supple and elastic, and I'm sure it has great blood flow. If you try and pinch the top of your scalp, you'll know, I don't know if anyone has done this, but if you pinch the top of your scalp, it's usually very tough and thick, and you can't pinch it together. And that's because the scalp is actually being pulled tight. There are these muscles at the front and the back and the side. And just like a drum skin, they're pulling down on it chronically, which means just prolonged over a very long period of time. And this process is causing inflammation. And when DHT is present, that's what causes these changes in the scalp that cuts off the blood supply and leads to balding. And this is actually really critical, because if you take finasteride, for example, it stops that process. But the changes have already happened in your scalp, like the skin is tougher. So the key piece of the puzzle is figuring out, how do you reverse this hardening that's happened to the scalp? And that's basically where scalp massages come in as a really effective way to reverse this hardening process that results in the balding.
Interesting. So myself, where I feel like I've got a lot of dead follicles, even with massaging, they can come back.
Yeah. So there's this misunderstanding that the follicles on the top of your head, because if you look at a guy that's completely bald but hasn't shaved his head, what you'll see is that the top and to the halfway down the back of his head is slick bald, but it'll still have the hair around the side. And why is that? And doctors will say it's because the follicles on the top of your scalp are sensitive to DHT, whereas the follicles around the sides of your head are not sensitive to DHT. And that doesn't really make any sense. Well, I mean, you can test that theory. What happens if you transplant the follicles from the side of your head to the top of your head? In theory, they're not sensitive, so they should last indefinitely. But what we see happening with people who get transplants is that essentially they're resetting the balding clock back to zero. They're getting their full head of hair back again, but they haven't fixed the underlying problem. So over the course of the next 5 to 10 years, those follicles will also begin to wither away. and die. And that's, you know, we have so many people who contact us saying, I've had 2 hair transplants. I thought that the first one would fix it. It didn't. The second one, I hoped it would fix it, but it didn't. And that's because the follicles on the side of your head aren't any different to the ones on the top. It's just that the scalp environment is different because it's under this tension, and the changes are happening in the scalp tissue itself. So yeah, getting a hair transplant doesn't fix the underlying problem, but it can give you, you know, 5 to 10 years of hair back if that's what you want.
That's interesting. I didn't even think about that. One of the things too, I'm curious because a lot of people like wearing hats, and including myself, when I go hiking, I do that for sun protection. But you know, what hats can really have a big effect on hair loss, right?
You know, that's a good question. And I thought potentially that was the case, but I think hats don't really do that much unless you're wearing them very tight and you're wearing them for a lot of hours every day. And if you are doing that, it might cut off the blood flow, but you'd be leaving like an imprint on your scalp if it was that level of tightness. So I don't think they really have that much of an effect on the hair loss, to be honest.
Okay,
it's definitely more to do with it's called the frontalis and occipitalis muscles under the skin at the front and back of your head, and they're pulling down on the scalp tissue between them and causing this inflammation and this whole process to happen. And there's actually been lots of interesting studies looking at this process and what happens, why are these muscles contracted, why are they pulling, and what happens if you relax them, because if they're causing this process and restricting the blood flow, what happens if you relax them? And there was actually a study from 2010, where they injected Botox, which forces muscles to relax. They injected the muscles at the front and the back of the scalp in patients who are balding. And over the course of the next year, they actually regrew their hair better than if they would have taken finasteride. So there's a lot of science and research now showing that the muscles in the scalp and at the front and the back are contracted. They're causing this inflammatory process that hardens the scalp. And if you can relax them, then it stops that process from happening, and it gives the follicles a chance to basically reverse the damage that's been done and regrow. So that's really exciting. And that's also where scalp massages come into play. So I can talk about that for a bit if you'd like.
Yeah, and before we do that, you know, I had to share just a quick story. You know, I've tried a couple of things. I remember I went to the mall and they had this powder you put on there, and it made it look like you had hair. But boy, what a mess it made. And there's a lot of products. And one thing which I know a lot of people are seeing a lot of red light and laser type products there. Maybe you could just briefly talk on that as compared to the effects, you know, as compared to with like massaging.
Yeah, sure. It's a good question. With laser caps, which they work through this phenomenon called low laser light therapy. It's basically just red light, and what it does, it works in 2 ways. Firstly, it does temporarily increase blood flow marginally. So this you got to think extra blood flow is always a good thing. That's actually how minoxidil works. It temporarily boosts blood flow, but only in the short term. So that's what laser caps do as well. They help with blood flow, which is great. And they also do help with sort of healing, and stopping inflammation. So if you imagine that your scalp is inflamed and it's causing this balding process to occur over the span of, you know, decades, a laser cap can help with healing the tissue and reducing the inflammation. So they do help. You will have to probably continue, if you use one, you'll have to continue using it for a long time. I think the gains, that there will be some gains, but it's not hugely effective. I think it's best when it's used in conjunction with scalp massage. I mean, with hair loss, it's always best to attack it from multiple angles, multiple ways, multiple mechanisms, just to try and get the most effective results.
Interesting. So that leads us into the GrowBand Pro, which is a really neat device. Been very popular. I see a lot of people buying it and sharing their stories, and maybe you can kind of dive in how it works and why people want to give it a shot.
Yeah, sure. So the way that the GrowBand Pro was born was that it links back to the Botox studies, and then there was also a study about actually doing scalp massages but with your hands. And this study looked at what happens if you can massage your scalp. I think it was something like 20 to 40 minutes a day for 6 months. And because when you massage your scalp, you're doing this pinching, you're trying to make the skin more loose and supple, and you're pushing the muscles up, which helps them to relax. So overall, it's just making the scalp environment much better in terms of blood flow and reducing inflammation, which is exactly what we want. And the results from that study showed that scalp massages are effective at regrowing hair. You just need to do them for long enough. So there was I think it was something like 40 hours of cumulative time spent massaging was what needed to happen to reach this point of regrowth, which is an awesome data point. But I don't know if you've ever tried massaging your scalp yourself with your hands. It's very tiring. I can do about 3 minutes before my fingers start to seize up. And so at Hairguard, we were thinking, this is awesome. We think this is the way forward. There are no drugs involved. There are no side effects. It can feel quite nice if you get a head massage. So maybe there's some way that we can make this easier to achieve. And that's basically where the GrowBand was born from. We designed this product to do the massaging for you, so that you're not spending 20 minutes a day just pinching and squeezing and rubbing your scalp. And the way that the GrowBand works is that it's you put it on. You can see it in your background. Yeah, it begins to inflate.
Put it on right now.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you know exactly how it works. But it's got airbags in the front and the back, and as they inflate, it lifts up the scalp. And what this helps to do is relaxing the muscles by pushing them up. So this is similar to that Botox study. It's forcing the muscles to relax, which stops the balding process from happening and getting any worse. And then as the scalp pushes up and creases together, that's also helping to break up the tough tissue and make it more supple and increase blood flow. Over the long term, it's making the tissue healthier. But we also did we measured the blood flow before, during, and after use. And you can see that there's a chart on our website, and it shows that blood flow almost doubles from baseline while you're wearing the GrowBand, and it stays elevated for about an hour after use. So it's really effective at helping to reduce the scalp tension, which is cutting off blood flow. It helps to boost blood flow there and then whilst you use it, and it also helps to make the tissue healthier in the long run. And that's where the lasting effects come from, because if you use minoxidil, for example, that does boost blood flow, for the 30 minutes to an hour that just after you've applied it, but it's not addressing any of the changes that have happened in your scalp. And that's why if you stop using minoxidil, you'll quite rapidly lose the hair that you've managed to hold on to. So with the GrowBand Pro, it's increasing blood flow in the short term, like minoxidil, but it's also helping to reverse these long-term changes that are actually responsible for the hair loss. Does that make sense?
It does. It's interesting. As far as session, is it 10-minute sessions?
Yeah, we recommend 10 to 15 minutes a day, which is really achievable because you can just, as you know, you just turn on the controller and let it go to work. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's great that you've made it so you can control how much pressure you want, and also on the back as well. I like that you have the dial, so you could have it tighter or looser.
Exactly.
Some people might think tighter is better, but I found like maybe loosening it a little bit is maybe more effective, because then it's allowing it to move a little bit more.
Yeah, there's a sweet spot where if it's too loose, then the airbags just inflate, but they're not really pushing against anything. And if it's too tight, then it doesn't get the movement. So there's this sweet spot where the pressure's not too high, it's not too tight, but it's just right. And that's where you get this lift where, like I say, relaxes the muscles and it pushes the scalp up and together.
What's a realistic time frame? I mean, is this something you would always want to wear and use for the rest of your life? Or, is this, because you were talking about how, some other options, it's a certain point that's really it. With this product, would you want to use this ongoing for years to come?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it goes back to those from the study previously looking at scalp massages, where I think it was 36 or 40 hours of cumulative massage was like the point that you needed to reach to see good results. So that equates to about 15 minutes a day, 6 months. And then once you've done that initial period, you can actually kind of wean yourself off the GrowBand if need be. And maybe instead of using it 7 days a week, you can use it 2 or 3 days a week. So the way you got to think about it is you've got to kind of reverse this damage that's happened to your scalp. Reverse the momentum. At the moment, you're on this downward slope and you're losing hair, and you've got to start reversing the momentum and going back up. But once you've got that momentum in the other direction and your hair is healthy, then it doesn't require nearly as much effort to maintain. So yeah, I mean, we always recommend using, for the long term, but just less frequently. I kind of think about, like if you want to be in good shape, you need to go to the gym in the long term. If you want to have a good head of hair, unless you're genetically gifted and lucky, you need to put the reps in, sort of thing, and keep your scalp healthy.
Yeah, talk about get hair. Novak Djokovic, because you're in Australia, he's the king of the Australian Open. He's got the most amazing set of hair. He's blessed.
Yeah, yes. Some guys are just.
You look pretty good. You look like you're doing pretty well yourself.
I'm all right. I mean, considering my family genetics, I'm doing great. My cousin, who's a couple of years older than me, is already slick bald, and my dad and my grandparents, they're both bald. They're all bald. So yeah, I'm doing well for my genetics, but I could definitely have a bit stronger hairline. But yeah, some guys like Novak just have unbelievably straight, thick hair, even though they're sort of late 30s, and some people have it into their 50s, 60s. So unfortunately, that's quite rare.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know there's great testimonials on the website, and I'll share a link to that. But are there any success stories that really stood out to you that maybe you can share?
I mean, Will, our founder, and my brother is definitely the best success story. He has tried basically everything under the sun, spent so much money trying to figure this stuff out, and he's managed to regrow his hair. You can see on the website it went down to, if you think about a full head of hair is 100%, it went down to maybe 30 or 40%, and now it's back up to, it's not perfect, it's back up to maybe 85, 90%, which is a huge achievement. But there are some great before and after photos on the website that you can see. So I'd recommend checking those out.
Great. And it comes with a really nice case. So you've all done well there. Anything coming down the pike that just you and I can just share? Nobody else will know, just you and I. Anything else coming down the pike as far as new products?
We have got some stuff in the works, actually. I can't talk about all of it right now, but Yeah, we do have some. We're working on improving the GrowBand itself. We're looking at a way to combine it with another therapy that we think will have synergistic effects. What's funny is that basically when you combine hair loss treatments, they tend to work synergistically. So if you're using A plus B, or if you're using A or if you're using B, they might work okay, but when you combine them, they work really well. So we're looking at combining the GrowBand with a separate technology, which we hope will have these synergistic effects and make it really effective.
Great, great. Excellent. That's great news. Look forward to hearing that. So I know there may be people that are skeptical, may want to try, may not. As far as return policy or, kind of a guarantee or whatever that might ease their concern, what can you share there as what the company offers for customers that do buy it?
Yeah, we have a solid money back guarantee where basically you can try the GrowBand for 180 days, and that will give you enough time to see if it's working for you. And if you aren't happy with the results, then you can get your money back. And that's what we stand by. So yeah, it's a solid guarantee, and it allows anyone to try it out, basically.
That's a very generous guarantee. So well done there. So, little risk, high reward, and may grow that hair back. And it's actually really relaxing too. So
yeah,
great product.
It's it's just like getting a scalp or head massage, which is generally nice and relaxing, and you pay for it. So yeah, it's awesome, and I use it quite a lot. But if I do want to mention that scalp massages that you do yourself are great. So if you can do them and you have the discipline to stick with it, then that is a great option. It's just the GrowBand is a way to automate that, and it removes the hardship of trying to do these scalp massages for 40 cumulative hours, which is really tough. Whereas if you use a product like ours, then it just makes it so much easier to achieve that total time of massage.
I think some people may actually grab their handheld personal percussion massager. You don't want to do that because you'll have a headache. So just use your hands.
Yeah, we did a lot of experimentation back in the day, and we bought all sorts of percussion massagers. And as you can imagine, just hammering your head with one of them doesn't really work, and tends to give you tinnitus. Yeah. So
yeah. Well, Gus, it was a pleasure speaking with you, enlightening audience. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to leave those in the comments, and we'll get with Gus, and maybe we could do a follow-up video, and I'll get with Gus to answer those questions. And I really appreciate you joining me today, and I hope you stay safe out there. And I know y'all are going into your summertime, and we're getting ready to get colder here. So enjoy your summer.
Yeah, thanks, Sid. It's been an absolute pleasure, and really nice to chat with you.
Great. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Cheers. You too.
Cheers.